This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us this Friday. I'm Ephraim Graham. The woman who says Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh sexually assaulted her in high school in the 80s is willing to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee if certain conditions are met. As this all unfolds, police arrested about 50 protesters on Capitol Hill Thursday. The arrest came as committee leaders negotiated with Ford's attorney.
We've gone beyond what we did the first day of just having the hearing she asked for, the open hearing she asked for, because we heard she might not want to come in that environment. So we offered one more closed session or two ways of doing it by transcript.
In a letter to the committee, Judge Kavanaugh writes he wants a hearing as soon as possible to clear his name. Jennifer Wishon joins us now from our Washington bureau for more on this ever-changing story. Jennifer, what conditions is Christine Blasey Ford asking for now in order to testify next week?
Well, Ford says that she doesn't want Kavanaugh to be in the room when she testifies. She says that she wants Kavanaugh to testify first so that he doesn't have the advantage of hearing her testimony before he testifies. And she also says that she will only answer questions from members, the senators who sit on the committee. There was some talk of attorneys being able to question her. She says she doesn't want that to happen. But of course, Ephraim, there are many days between now and Thursday, and this is all still being negotiated. If this hearing happens, what do you think we can expect? Well, it will certainly be must-see TV, that is for sure. But Ephraim, I don't think we can avoid a situation of he said, she said. This happened many decades ago. Despite the trauma that Ford has said that she experienced, there are certain things that she can't remember about the situation. And the other people that she said were in the room with her say that it didn't happen. And so I just think it's going to kind of turn into he said, she said. With that said, I think that the way that Republicans who control this committee, and may I say that it is all male Republicans who sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee, the way they handle this, the respect that they show to Ford, to Kavanaugh, to this allegation of sexual assault, I think is almost as important as what both Kavanaugh and Ford have to say, and also will drastically affect their ability to get their nominee confirmed and seated on the Supreme Court.
Well, Jennifer, you cover Washington politics, always a consideration here. How are Republicans and Democrats working to play this in their favor? Yeah, well, Ephraim, believe it or not, the midterm elections are just about 6 weeks away. And so whether they want to or not, both Republicans and Democrats are going to have to try to use this to their advantage. I think for Democrats, they're realizing that the sooner Ford testifies, the better for them, because the longer she was delaying, the more demands that she was making, the more it felt like this was politically motivated. Again, I think Republicans have to handle this very carefully. Certainly, Republicans would love to have a conservative, pro-life justice seated on the Supreme Court before the midterm elections. Because remember, Ephraim, evangelical voters who overwhelmingly sent President Trump to the White House, one of the top issues they were concerned about was getting conservative pro-life justices who respect religious liberty, respect the rule of law on the court. And so that would be a big win for Republicans. But again, there are many, many days between now and Thursday. This is going to drag on for several more weeks. And in Washington, we know, Ephraim, that even just 24 hours can feel like an eternity in politics. Indeed, it will be a busy week. Jennifer Wishon reporting for us from Washington. Thank you so much. The leader of Hezbollah said the balance of power has changed between his group and Israel, and he has much more accurate missiles. Israel has been bombing sites in Syria, trying to prevent Iran from delivering more advanced weapons to its proxy Hezbollah. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu fired back, saying if Nasrallah dared to confront Israel, he'd get, quote, a blow that he cannot even imagine. Meanwhile, a senior Israeli military delegation said it had open and transparent discussions with Russian military leaders in attempt attempts to calm Russian anger over Syria downing one of its planes. Russia is blaming Israel for carrying out an airstrike in Syria at the time and threatening a response. CBN Middle East Bureau correspondent Julie Stahl has more on this story.
A Syrian missile brought down the Russian plane over the Mediterranean, killing all 15 people on board. But Russia blamed Israel for the crash, saying it was caught in the crossfire as Israeli fighter jets attacked targets in Syria.
The Israeli pilots were using the Russian aircraft as a shield and pushed it into the line of fire of the Syrian defense.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called Russian President Vladimir Putin and expressed condolences for the death of the Russian servicemen, but said the blame was on Syria. Israel established a deconfliction agreement with Russia several years ago to enable Israel to strike Iranian targets inside Syria without colliding with Russia. For Israel, maintaining that understanding is critical to its defense. The IDF released a statement saying it had followed the deconfliction agreement with the Russians in carrying out this mission. They said Syrians used extensive and inaccurate anti-aircraft fire. The Israeli Air Force jets were already in Israeli airspace when the Russian plane was hit. And during the Israeli airstrike, the Russian plane was not in the area. Former Israeli National Security Advisor Yaakov Amidror said in a telephone briefing that the strikes in Syria are a high-priority mission for Israel.
The importance of the target will not be changed. It is a very important target for Israel to prevent the Iranians from building this independent war machine in Syria and to prevent them from transferring game-changer weapon systems into the hands of Hezbollah.
United Nations Special Envoy to Syria urged the players to exercise restraint.
We call upon all parties, especially when we are getting this type of positive news regarding what could have been a dramatic military escalation, to refrain from military actions elsewhere that would only exacerbate an already complex situation.
Regarding Iran's presence in Syria, the U.S. says Iran has to go.
Iran cannot dictate the future for the Syrian people. If Russia is interested in bringing peace to Syria, it should make sure Iran and its militias leave Syria once and for all. The risk of a broader conflict will leave with them.
For now, Amidror said, the key to maintaining Israel's ability to strike inside Syria is convincing Russia that the incident wasn't Israel's fault. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Here now is a look at some of the other major stories we're following for you inside the CBN newsroom today. North Carolina residents are still trying to clean up after Hurricane Florence, although the danger from flooding is far from over. Florence dumped nearly 36 inches of rain on parts of North Carolina, and many areas remain cut off by floodwaters. Meanwhile, South Carolina is preparing for record flooding as river water from North Carolina heads downstream. South Carolina's governor already estimates the flood damage to be at $1 billion. He says the flooding is the worst disaster in the state's modern history. Hillsong Church is forming its own denomination, pulling away from Australia's largest Pentecostal denomination. Senior pastor Brian Houston says the church is a global church within an Australian base, but with its headquarters now in the United States. Pastor Houston says Hillsong is growing around the world. It needs to be able to credential its own pastors and structure the church in a crucial way that allows the progress of its mission. A bullet shattered a window at the Lifeway Christian Resource Building in Nashville Thursday. Police confirm a loud pop was heard before a fifth-floor window shattered. No one was hurt. Police have not released possible suspects or motives. Right now, it is not clear whether the building was specifically targeted. President and CEO of Lifeway, Tom Rayner, tweeted about the incident and thanked people for their prayers. Two religious organizations in Louisiana have filed a lawsuit to stop their local library from hosting a drag queen story time. Local news outlets report Warriors for Christ and Special Forces of Liberty say the event is unconstitutional and violates the First Amendment. The groups believe that drag queen story time endorses a religion of secular humanism and entangles government in religion. They say if the court will not stop the event, they will ask the court to have a minister there to provide a rebuttal. The Roman Catholic Archdiocese of New York has hired a former federal judge to review its procedures and protocols for handling allegations of sexual abuse. Cardinal Timothy Dolan announced the appointment of Barbara Jones Thursday. Dolan said he was ordering the review because Catholics in New York have demanded accountability, transparency, and action from church leadership. Jones says the Archdiocese has already a robust infrastructure to deal with the issue, but she will evaluate its effectiveness. This comes after New York's Attorney General announced she was investigating how they handled abuse allegations across the state. Coming up, they gave up their careers, moved halfway around the world, and they never saw it coming. See what brought these doctors to a remote part of Kenya. The amazing story's next. In 2010, Eric Hansen gave up a lucrative medical career in America. He packed his bags and moved his wife and 4 children 8,000 miles from his home in Texas. Now they live in a remote part of Africa where he serves as a Christian missionary doctor. George Thomas brings us his story from Kenya.
Para siku mbili tutitompira, okay? Sawa.
Dr. Eric Hansen didn't speak Swahili before he moved to Kenya. In fact, he and his family never planned on living on the African continent at all.
My wife actually asked me when we were dating if I was going to be a long-term cross-cultural missionary, and I said no, and that was the right answer. So it was a little bit of a bait and switch. What brought us here 7 years ago was really God changing our heart.
The Hansens moved from Texas to Kenya, specifically to work at Kijabe Hospital, which is about an hour outside the capital city of Nairobi.
Where are things with you? Are you okay? Are you ready? Okay, so can we...
Hansen is the lead pediatric surgeon at Kijabe. By definition, he's a missionary doctor, but the definition is changing.
The model of the past, where mission hospitals were staffed almost exclusively by expatriate missionaries, is maybe relevant in some places, but increasingly not the best model. And I think that as we train, as the Kenyan staff here at Kijabe grows, half the physicians are African here.
Scrub team, we have Muredi, Francis, Kimani's here also, and then we have students. Okay.
If that means that in 10, 15, 20 years, I'm not needed here, that's fantastic. But if I am, that's fine too.
To better appreciate the services provided by these Christian hospitals, you just need to look at the numbers. For example, here in Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals. If he were simply a surgeon, Hansen could perhaps treat hundreds of children each year, but as a teacher, the reach is far greater.
Training these people who will go out and train others, we're talking about tens of thousands of children. That's more than I could ever do in a lifetime. I think it's a great testimony to the love of Christ.
Well, we try to put the names of all the children next to over their heads, and just let them know that they're loved.
Every opportunity we get to care for someone is an opportunity to be love.
It's a sentiment shared by many at the hospital, including Chief Surgeon Dr. Peter Bird.
So I might be very good at taking appendix out, but someone like Mercy or other pastors are really good at just sharing the gospel. That's critical. You can't just be populating hell with all these people with excellent hernia repairs. You've got to be actually doing more than that.
Twice each day, doctors, staff, and patients have the opportunity to attend services at the campus chapel.
Because of what he did about 2,000 years ago, he's still speaking life to each and every one of us.
Still, the challenges here can be great. And there are everyday life challenges living abroad.
Hello.
The question is on the way.
Hello.
You know, we don't always have running water. That can be frustrating. Electricity is generally reliable.
Muredi. Hey, good morning.
What? Do you know where the sugar is? I put it over by the coffee machine, I thought. Yeah.
There are days I think I could pack up and we could live a different life somewhere else.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we wouldn't trade this life for anything. Big picture, we're happy here. We have a sense of purpose, a sense of calling.
I think the challenges that we have here ultimately pale in comparison to the opportunities that we have.
There's the epiglottis, okay? It's a privilege to be able to operate on anybody. From a surgeon standpoint, it's a cool case. From the patient standpoint, we hope we can really help the child and the family. And then from a training standpoint, it's key.
Hansen and Bird could easily make six figures in their home countries.
Where I come from, Australia, there are many surgeons. They don't need another surgeon there, really.
Instead, they have chosen a different life, a different calling, with its own unique rewards.
Living here, we feel like we've hit the lottery. It's about obedience, it's about, love, hopefully response and love, and loving other people that are my trainees, but also my colleagues and also the patients. So let me say a prayer for Moby. God in heaven, we pray for your mercy. I thank you for the chance to take care of
George Thomas, CBN News, Kijabe, Kenya.
Still ahead, how to build a better gut and not break the bank. We're giving you a crash course in grocery budgeting, and you can get your gut to reap all the benefits next. CBN saw more than 100,000 requests for the booklet, How to Build a Better Gut. Many viewers sent questions about this series, like how can I eat healthy foods for my gut without breaking the bank? Today, medical reporter Lori Johnson answers this and more.
Just because some unhealthy foods like processed macaroni and cheese are cheap and some healthy foods like wild-caught salmon are expensive, don't think for a minute you have to spend a lot to eat healthy. Tiffany Terzak is living proof. She feeds her Atlanta family of 4 super healthy food for, get this, only $330 a month.
We eat real food, so food that comes from the ground, animals that eat plants from the ground. We hardly eat anything processed, and by processed, I'm referring to boxes, just add water type of things. We don't eat that.
Tiffany's online grocery budget boot camp is so popular, there's a waiting list. Probably because she saves her students an average of $2,400 a year.
I believe God has given me the gift of teaching people how to eat real food on a budget. Everything involved in that arena comes easy to me, and I know it's hard for other people.
Tiffany took me to her local grocery and shared her top tips, like stocking up on sale items.
What really caught my eye is this, and these are drumsticks for $1.79 per pound, marked down from $2.49, and these are free-range organic as well. And there are several packages up here. There's at least, 4, 5, 6 packages of them. So when someone is concerned about eating healthier food, trying to buy organics, but they always say that organic costs so much, if you just keep your eyes open, you can find really great deals on organic food at the grocery store.
So you would buy all of those packages and put them in the freezer?
I would, because the sales cycle for grocery stores is 6 to 8 weeks. And now I don't have to buy it at full price in, say, 2 weeks from now. We're good to go for several weeks.
When you hit the produce department, comparison shop. You'll be surprised some organics, like carrots, are usually pretty cheap.
So it's a 30-cent difference between conventional and organic, which is really great if you're trying to buy better quality food, but trying to keep it within the budget.
Don't pay more for chopped or washed produce. Save big money by doing it yourself. Seasonal produce is usually less expensive and abundant. And check out the bargain bin.
Some of the stores will include organic produce in this marked down section, and it doesn't change the price. It's still 99 cents for that bag, which can really save you a lot of money.
Frozen produce can be just as healthy as fresh and often a lot cheaper. And buying the right stuff in bulk also saves. For example, these big containers of probiotic-rich yogurt are a lot less per ounce than single-serving containers. Hunt for low-priced canned foods like these fiber-filled organic beans, 10 for $10.
What you may not realize is that you don't have to buy 10 to get the deal of $1 per can.
Wild canned fish is way cheaper than fresh or frozen, and it's just as healthy. Here's a good tip: only buy food at the grocery store.
Aluminum foil will cost you more at the grocery store than it would if you were to buy it at a different store that wasn't a food-focused store.
Like Walmart?
Like Walmart, Costco, Target.
Watch out for the specialty cheese section. The blue cheese here is twice the price of what's in the dairy section. Steer clear of bottled and canned drinks like juices and sodas. Stick with good old tap water instead. Also, avoid packaged snack foods like cereal bars. It's much healthier and cheaper to make them from scratch, from organic whole oats.
If you are intentional with what you cook from scratch, and you cook the things that will have the biggest impact on your budget, then you can actually make cooking from scratch work in your favor.
Bone broth and kimchi are two of the best things for your gut. You can buy them at the store, but they're also really cheap and easy to make at home. First, buy meat containing bones. It's cheaper than boneless. After eating the meat, instead of throwing the bones away, save and toss them in a crock pot with water and 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. Let sit for an hour, then add onion, carrot, and celery. Cook on low for 24 hours or longer. Remove the large pieces of bone and vegetables, then strain and enjoy.
Looks good, too. Stay with us. We'll be right back. That's it for CBN NewsWatch. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you back here Monday.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. The woman who says Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh sexually assaulted her in high school in the 80s is willing to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee if certain conditions are met. As this all unfolds, police arrested about 50 protesters on Capitol Hill Thursday. The arrest came as committee leaders negotiated with Ford's attorney.
We've gone beyond what we did the first day of just having the hearing she asked for, the open hearing she asked for, because we heard she might not want to come in that environment. So we offered one more closed session or 2 ways of doing it by transcript.
In a letter to the committee, Judge Kavanaugh writes he wants a hearing as soon as possible to clear his name. The leader of Hezbollah said the balance of power had changed between his group and Israel and that he has much more accurate missiles. Israel has been bombing sites in Syria, trying to prevent Iran from delivering more advanced weapons to its proxy, Hezbollah. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu fired back, saying if Nasrallah dared confront Israel, he'd get, quote, a blow that he cannot even imagine. Meanwhile, a senior Israeli military delegation said it had an open and transparent discussion with Russian military leaders in an attempt to calm Russian anger over Syria downing one of its planes. Russia is blaming Israel for carrying out an airstrike in Syria at the time and threatening a response. CBN Middle East Bureau correspondent Julie Stahl has this story.
A Syrian missile brought down the Russian plane over the Mediterranean, killing all 15 people on board. But Russia blamed Israel for the crash, saying it was caught in the crossfire as Israeli fighter jets attacked targets in Syria.
The Israeli pilots were using the Russian aircraft as a shield and pushed it into the line of fire of the Syrian defense.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called Russian President Vladimir Putin and expressed condolences for the death of the Russian servicemen, but said the blame was on Syria. Israel established a deconfliction agreement with Russia several years ago to enable Israel to strike Iranian targets inside Syria without colliding with Russia. For Israel, maintaining that understanding is critical to its defense. The IDF released a statement saying it had followed the deconfliction agreement with the Russians in carrying out this mission. They said Syrians used extensive and inaccurate anti-aircraft fire. The Israeli Air Force jets were already in Israeli airspace when the Russian plane was hit. And during the Israeli airstrike, the Russian plane was not in the area. Former Israeli National Security Advisor Yaakov Amidror said in a telephone briefing that the strikes in Syria are a high-priority mission for Israel.
The importance of the target will not be changed. It is a very important target for Israel to prevent the Iranians from building this independent war machine in Syria and to prevent them from transferring game-changer weapon systems into the hands of Hezbollah.
United Nations Special Envoy to Syria urged the players to exercise restraint.
We call upon all parties, especially when we are getting this type of positive news regarding what could have been a dramatic military escalation, to refrain from military actions elsewhere that would only exacerbate an already complex situation.
Regarding Iran's presence in Syria, the U.S. says Iran has to go.
Iran cannot dictate the future for the Syrian people. If Russia is interested in bringing peace to Syria, it should make sure Iran and its militias leave Syria once and for all. The risk of a broader conflict will leave with them.
For now, Ami Dror said, the key to maintaining Israel's ability to strike inside Syria is convincing Russia that the incident wasn't Israel's fault. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Here now is a look at some of the other major stories we're following for you inside the CBN newsroom today. North Carolina residents are still trying to clean up after Hurricane Florence, although the danger from flooding is still far from over. Florence dumped nearly 36 inches of rain on parts of North Carolina, and many areas remain cut off by floodwaters. In South Carolina, they are preparing for record flooding as river water from North Carolina heads downstream. South Carolina's governor already estimates the flood damage to be at about $1 billion. He says the flooding is the worst disaster in the state's modern history. Hillsong Church is forming its own denomination and pulling away from Australia's largest Pentecostal denomination. Senior pastor Brian Houston says the church is a global church with an Australian base, but with its headquarters now in the United States. Pastor Houston says with Hillsong's growth around the world, it needs to be able to credential its own pastors and structure the church in a way crucial to the progress of its mission. A bullet shattered a window at the Lifeway Christian Resource Building in Nashville Thursday. Police confirmed a loud pop was heard before a fifth-floor window shattered. No one was hurt. Police have not released possible suspects or motives. It is not clear whether the building was specifically targeted. President and CEO of Lifeway, Tom Rayner, tweeted about the incident and thanked people for their prayers. Two religious organizations in Louisiana have filed a lawsuit to stop their local library from hosting a drag queen story time. The local news outlets are reporting Warriors for Christ and Special Forces of Liberty say the event is unconstitutional and violates the First Amendment. The group believes that drag queen storytime endorses a religion of secular humanism and entangles government in religion. They say if the court will not stop the event, they want the court to have a minister there to provide a rebuttal. The Roman Catholic Archdiocese of New York has hired a former federal judge to review its procedures and protocols for handling allegations of sexual abuse. Cardinal Timothy Dolan announced the appointment of Barbara Jones Thursday. Dolan said he was ordering the review because Catholics in New York have demanded accountability, transparency, and action from church leadership. Jones says the Archdiocese already has a robust infrastructure to deal with the issue, but she will evaluate its effectiveness. This comes after New York's Attorney General announced she was investigating how they handled abuse allegations across the state. This week, a super typhoon lashed across the northern Philippines, killing 74 people. At least 40 are still missing. Thousands are now homeless. CBN disaster relief teams were among the first to provide some much-needed help and comfort for the typhoon victims. Lucille Talusan has this report.
Jackie Lou Basawil is grieving over the death of her brother. A landslide killed him after Super Typhoon Mangkhut struck their village.
This is so terrible. My brother was asleep when the mountain suddenly caved in, destroying our house.
Jackie Lou's brother and aunt are among the 74 killed in the typhoon. In a nearby village, rescuers search for survivors and the bodies of those still missing.
In this very tragic time, CBN Disaster Relief Team is here, not only to give material help to the grieving and suffering families, but also hope, comfort, and God's love.
The villagers here are thankful CBN brought them rice, noodles, milk, and other items. It was also a great opportunity to share the good news of salvation to survivors and pray for them.
My grandmother said she was so delighted that you had to travel very far to visit us. Thank you so much. Our sadness was alleviated when you prayed for us. You reminded us that with God's help, we shall overcome this trial.
Lucille Talusan, CBN News, Benguet, Philippines.
Still ahead here on CBN NewsWatch, Philadelphia Eagles Carson Wentz returns to the field this weekend, so what are fans expecting? We'll explore that coming up next. Stay with us. And welcome back. Carson Wentz returns to the field Sunday. He'll lead his Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles as they face the Indianapolis Colts. And here to talk about this much anticipated return is sports reporter Sean Brown. Before we look ahead, let's look back. What happened that sideline Wentz? He didn't play in the Super Bowl. What happened?
Okay, so it's week 14, regular season, getting ready to head into the postseason. Carson Wentz, quarterback, Philadelphia Eagles, is heading into the end zone. He makes a dash. Just as he crosses the goal line, he takes a hit, tears his ACL. He is out for the season, puts the Philadelphia Eagles in a terrible situation. But they rose to the occasion, obviously. Backup quarterback Nick Foles rose to the occasion.
Cinderella story.
Cinderella story.
Indeed. So how have the champs started this season?
I had a chance to sit with head coach Doug Peterson to talk with him, and he said that, their thing going into every season, they have this saying, and it's always keep chopping. Keep chopping. He said it takes a lot of swings to chop down that tree, but you got to keep chopping. If you keep chopping, keep working hard, keep studying tape, good things will happen to the football team. And so that's pretty much where they are. It's just because they're Super Bowl champs, it's another day at the office. Let's get back to the grind.
I like that. Now, Carson hasn't taken a hit in 9 months. Is he ready?
We'll find out. I tell you, coming back from an ACL tear is really difficult. But the thing about practicing is you cannot duplicate the speed of the game. And that's where it's going to come down to. 1, the speed of the game, and 2, rhythm with your team, your chemistry with the team. That's something you can only get, you can practice and prepare for it. Hopefully you're ready, when you face that first game, which is, again, coming up on Sunday against the Colts. So we'll find out.
Now, lots of talk about this. Is this the right move for Carson to start over Nick Foles? I mean, he led them to the Super Bowl, so is this the right move?
You know what? This is a debate that I think has been going on throughout the offseason.
Yeah.
The right thing to do, if Carson is your guy, you drafted him to be the starting quarterback for this franchise, you go with him. You're in a great situation because you have a backup that can step up to the occasion and do it all again if he has to. That's a perfect situation. But yes, it is the right thing to do. You go with Carson Wentz. It's his job to lose, which I don't foresee happening. So you make it known. Doug Peterson has said, look, I'm not going to get into this back and forth and try to create a quarterback controversy. Carson is our guy. He's going to remain our guy, and that's the end of it. Now, if we get into week 5 and it doesn't look like it's going well, then the decision is going to have to be made. Do we go with Nick Foles? Do we put him in? Then we'll start having that conversation again, and then it'll be a little bit more appropriate, and then it'll lie with head coach Doug Peterson. We'll have to see. But right now, it is definitely the right decision.
Now, you sat down with the coach. Is there any tension between Foles and Wentz?
No. You know what? It's a competitive sport.
I know.
But they have a really, really unique relationship, mainly that's rooted in their faith in Christ. Every quarterback, starting quarterback, backup quarterback, the locker room, they don't always have that type of relationship, but these guys get it. They understand each other's roles. Nick knows that he is a backup. Every backup wants to be the starter. If you're a backup, of course, you want to be the starter. But again, they understand each other's roles. He recognizes, Carson, you're the starter. I'm the backup. If something happens to you, I got your back. And when Carson went down, Carson's lifting up prayers for Nick Foles. We support you. I think that was pivotal in giving Nick Foles the confidence that he needed to step up to the plate last season, and we saw what happened there. But here we are again for the 2018-19 season, and hey, Carson, you're the guy. I'm going to support you. You can do this. And their relationship, again, is rooted in faith. It's like, look, man, I've got your back. You've got my back. We understand this is bigger than both of us. Let's not jeopardize the team and our going back and forth trying to figure out who's going to start. Now, mind you, of course Nick Foles wants to start.
Of course he does.
But there's a protocol in play, and he's going to respect that. And it's really admirable to see the relationship that these two quarterbacks have in the locker room. I think it's key to leading this football team.
Yeah, and I think that faith spreads throughout the team as a result of that great leadership.
It has. That's a whole story within itself. Faith is definitely present in that locker room.
Beautiful, beautiful. Sean Brown, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you for having me.
Much appreciated. Still ahead, they call him the Renaissance Redneck, and his video blogs are taking the internet by storm. Head down the Pungo Prairie to meet this hunter and camper extraordinaire next. Hunting, camping, fishing, cooking, Bill Dixon is a connoisseur of outdoor adventure. His video blogs on Facebook and YouTube feature not only his passion for God's creation, but his love for Jesus. Our Wendy Griffith went out to Pungo Prairie to meet the man known as the Renaissance Redneck.
Hey y'all, welcome to the Pungo Prairie. And we're gonna be hunting some of these legendary Saskatchewan trophy whitetail bucks. So don't go nowhere, cause you don't wanna miss this.
more than 5 years, Bill Dixon has been serving up a delicious medley of recipes, outdoor adventures, and camping tips, sprinkled with a good dose of faith that has delighted fans of his video blogs.
Now I'm going to show y'all how to set up camp the Pungo Prairie Way.
Pungo is a rural area of eastern Virginia, and the last place Dixon thought he would end up after his marriage ended.
She was the love of my life. We were married almost 20 years, and she just decided she wanted to do something different. And I always thought I was going to be in the mountains at this stage in my life. Sure. God finally told me, Dixon, you're not going to be in the mountains. You can go to the mountains, but I've given you the Pungo Prairie, so you got to learn to bloom where you're planted.
Some of that planting happened after Dixon flunked the 5th grade and had to repeat it at a Christian school.
My mother, she kind of got worried about me. One day I was out in the yard and she was watching me, and I came in the house and she said, Billy, are you okay? I said, yeah, Mom, I'm fine. Why? She said, who are you talking to out there? I said, what do you mean? She said, I'm a little bit worried about every time I look out, you're like talking, your lips are moving. Oh, Mom, I'm just praying. She said, you're praying? I said, yeah, Miss Glazebrook told me the Bible says to pray without ceasing. Now, the first thing we're going to do...
For years, friends begged Dixon to share his delicious recipes in a cookbook. But Dixon thought he could reach more people by video.
Made a what you got chili, just out of what I had in the refrigerator in the pantry. It wasn't planned at all. And I shot a real quick impromptu video of that. And I said, that'll shut them up. Once they see that, I won't have to worry about it anymore.
And they loved it.
And then they're ready, you got to do another one. You got to do another one.
Bill, you always say a blessing over the food. And why do you do that?
I thought, okay, if I'm going to be doing this, let me do it so that maybe people can see that you can have fun, you can hunt, you can fish, you can love the great outdoors, you can party, you can have a great time, you can still love the Lord, and it's even better. And the subtleties of the Bible or God's minute sitting there in a scene and a clip and the blessing at the end.
Lord, thank you so much for
maybe, just maybe that will, grab the attention of somebody.
Dixon says one of his videos did more than that. It helped save a life.
And he said, I just want to let you know that you really kept me going for the last year while I was laid up 100 and some odd days in the hospital, battling 2 forms of leukemia. And him and his 6-year-old son, they watched the video Good Camp, which is a time-lapse thing of me setting my hunting camp up in the mountains of Virginia. And they just watched, and he said, I just wanted to let you know how much I appreciated being able to go to watch your videos while I was spending that time in the hospital. And that really just blew me away.
So Bill, right now, as I'm interviewing you, we are surrounded by several deer that I'm assuming that you shot and killed and ate, and a very large buffalo. Can you tell us about this?
Each one of these animals you see, I took, and my daddy taught me early on, if you're going to kill something, make sure you're going to eat it. And I like knowing where my food comes from. Mm-hmm. And one way I know where my food comes from is where I go out and harvest it myself.
Today, the man affectionately known as the Renaissance Redneck entertains his many followers on Facebook and YouTube and has no plans to stop.
To me, there's 2 verses in the Bible that is almost all you need. And one's John 3:16. We know what that is.
Yeah.
And the other one is Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. So if you accept Jesus and you act on that faith and then you believe Psalm 23 verse 1, Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, everything else comes together.
And that, girls and boys, is what's cooking on the Pungo Prairie.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News, somewhere on the Pungo Prairie.
Great words from the Renaissance Redneck. I tell you, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. We'll be right back. Well, the weekend is here, and perhaps you're considering going to the movies. Our friends at Plugged In Online are taking a look at the house with a clock in its walls.
Have a look around. You're perfectly safe.
The house with a clock in its walls tells the tale of young Lewis, who arrives in the 1950s town of New Zebedee after his parents die in a car accident.
Are you wearing a robe?
It's a kimono.
He's there to live with his rather bizarre Uncle Jonathan, a guardian who quickly declares that in his house, cookies make for a fine dinner and there's no such thing as bedtime.
Things are quite different here.
The old house, full of mahogany banisters, oddly moving stained glass windows, and walls lined with ticking clocks, is a wonderland of seemingly limitless dimensions. It's something full of magic, as is Uncle Jonathan's next-door neighbor, Mrs. Zimmerman.
So, you've told Lewis everything?
Well, not everything.
But when Uncle Jonathan admits that he's really a warlock and willing to teach Lewis the magical ropes, the boy starts thinking that his situation might not be as bad as he first thought.
Please teach me, please, please.
Okay, have it your way.
Based on a popular kids' mystery book, this film has an initial feeling of broad, magic-filled playfulness. But director Eli Roth, known for his gory, adult-focused horror films, then quickly opens the door to pentagrams, blood magic spells, necromancy, and demons. It's more than enough to keep families, and especially kids, outside these cinematic walls. I'll give The House with the Clock in Its Walls a 1 out of 5 for family friendliness. For an in-depth review on this film, or anything else at your local box office, visit us at PluggedIn.com. Plugging you into the movies, I'm Cheryl Wilhelmy for Focus on the Family's Plugged In Movie Review.
Well, right now it is time for your Friday Faithful. As we wrap this week, I leave you with this thought. Take your human limits off your all-powerful God. There is nothing he can't do. And get this, if you can imagine or think it, it's probably not his plan anyway. God is not only looking to meet your expectations, he's looking to exceed them. After all, he is God. And with that word, I encourage you to make this a faithful Friday. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can get more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. We'd also love to hear what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Make this a fabulous Friday, everybody. We'll see you right back here come Monday. Goodbye, and God bless.